So, hey, what's up, everyone? You're currently tuned into the TBD radio show here on KCSB FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara or netnetradio.com out of Tijuana. You just heard a live performance by Rob Magill live from his home in Ojai. How have you been holding up during the quarantine, Rob? How do you like virtual gigs? How have you
Uh,
adapted as a musician? Every artist I have usually has like mixed responses on that front.
right, yeah. Well, I haven't done too many, so I don't virtual gigs that is,
Yeah.
but it's interesting. I'm new to the filming yourself at your house
Yeah, right.
aspect of things.
Yeah, totally. How have you adapted otherwise? Like, how do you feel just like as not having shows? Like, I know you're pretty active for a while, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of there was a probably like 5 or 6 shows that were booked in 2020 that I was going to do and be a part of that would have been really uh, good to and
Yeah, exactly. Same here with
yeah,
some stuff I had going as well, you know? Big bummer, but
yeah,
we pulled through. Hopefully, there's a light at the end of the tunnel and
yeah,
hopefully we can get some stuff going again.
yeah. I think so. I think it's gonna. I think it. I mean, I'm always pretty optimistic, but I feel like it's gonna come sooner than I think. But I could be wrong. I'm probably
Yeah.
gonna be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, at least that's how I feel like we've all been kind of wrong in the last few months where we're like, oh, dude, just around the corner. And then it's like,
Right.
oh, nope, California is now the epicenter. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
But anyways, so I guess before we get started into like the rest of the interview, I like to encourage our listeners to get involved in their community in some capacity as much as possible. So I've been asking artists to like choose an organization from their community they feel is like important for our listeners to know about. So you mentioned to me ARC of Ventura County. What can you tell me about ARC and what does this organization mean to you?
Well, I think it's important that uh, those facilities for the Arc Foundation kind of, uh, you know, people that need to donate or donate to them.
Yeah.
So the people just have like a better way of living
Yeah. So
with disabilities.
what exactly does ARC do?
Well, it's kind of a well, I volunteered at the one in Ojai
Mm,
for a little bit. I was technically the art teacher,
that's sick.
and what I observed is that it communicates and kind of it's kind of almost like a school day. It seems
Mhm.
like for people that with special needs,
That's
and
sick.
uh, and I was kind of luckily I for a little bit I helped them my students with artistic endeavors. It's kind of like therapeutic for them. Well,
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. That's sick. My mom actually donates to ARC pretty often. So
Oh,
yeah,
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 that's great.
yeah, it's cool that you chose ARC because I was like, oh wow, yeah, ARC is actually pretty cool. They're doing some pretty good work. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess for those unfamiliar, ARC stands for American Retarded Children, I believe it is.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, if you're looking for a cool way to get involved to help out people with special needs and give them opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have, be sure to check out ARC of Ventura County. And I believe you can find info on their website, right? So
Yes, you can. And there's options to donate too
yeah.
on the
So,
website.
yeah, so donate. I know they don't even just take like money. You can give them like clothing, all kinds of other
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of like a thing that my mom does. That's kind of like a side hustle is like she, I guess, collects stuff that people are giving away, like stuff that I guess people would want that people just don't want to deal with like selling or donating. So my mom
Mhm.
would just like pick it up for free and then she'll have a garage sale,
Mm.
just like make some extra like side cash,
Right. Yeah.
like her job. And then all of the stuff that we don't sell, which is like still good stuff. It's just it wasn't like picked up. We'll send over to ARC, and then I guess ARC
Yeah.
has like a thrift store or something, and they use it to raise money as well.
Yeah. I know there's one in Ventura,
Yeah,
the thrift store.
yeah. ARC's a really cool organization for those not familiar with it.
Yes.
So, Rob, your work output is like seriously prolific and it's largely improv based. So, you had to start somewhere. What were your musical upbringings like, and how did this lead to your interest in improv and like free jazz and stuff?
Um, do you want me to go back to childhood, or do you want me to go more sooner than that?
I guess you can go back to childhood. Let's do it. Let's go back that far.
Okay. Well, my musical upbringing, I guess I could use it for earliest stages of recreational listening to, let's say, around adolescence.
Yeah.
My musical interests were mainly based upon what my mother was listening to, which I kind of feel is a lot of childhood interest, is kind of what your environment is.
Oh, for sure.
And most of the time we would listen to the radio, and it was KRF 101, which is still on the radio station.
Yeah, like all the classics.
But at that period of time, they were playing 50s and 60s music because
really?
Because that's what oldies was at the time in the 90s.
Oh wow, that's sick, actually.
So that's how I learned. That's how I learned about all the girl groups from Motown and all the pop songs, like and kind of like folk rock and doo wop and rhythm and blues, old rhythm and blues.
Yeah, that's tight.
But then on the other hand, my my concert going experience was kind of Ventura County's quote unquote underground bluegrass scene, which in the 90s, and which kind of basically was just consisted of oh man, I can't remember his name right now, but Phil Salazar.
Okay.
Who's a music educator and violin performer.
So you would see him play often in like Ventura and stuff, or?
Yeah, Ventura, Santa Paula, Oxnard.
That's sick. So he played like bluegrass?
Yeah, mainly bluegrass. There'll be folk and jazz inspired things, but in a bluegrass setting. And so that was kind of like my concert going experiences. And then there was a little bit of classical sprinkled in there too, with in Oxnard at the Performing Arts Center. I remember going to a couple performances at that period of time.
That's actually really cool.
But it was kind of like, romantic era classical music, which I love and still learn from. And then in adolescence, well, I mean, I never really got past the radio interest.
Yeah.
And something and my mother played a lot of musicals in the household, which at the time I'm more open to it now, but at the time drove me up the wall. So I just couldn't stand it. But I like them now. But yeah, I never had the experience at that period of time of my music, like what my interests were. I enjoyed all those things, but it wasn't me finding out what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
And then in adolescence, going to my grandmother's house, which is actually this house I'm in currently. Okay. She would show me this Dizzy Gillespie CD that I really enjoy. And it's recordings from the 40s, early 40s, and it has it's like an orchestra doing jazz material and Latin rhythm influences and Sarah Vaughan singing. And that was really influential on me at the same period of time. So this is adolescence now.
Yeah.
And at the same time, that was my first, I would watch TV and I saw some like split second thing on Jimi Hendrix, and that was my first like the push button of my musical interest,
Yeah.
as a serious art form.
Mhm.
And then it kind of just fell in, with classic rock music, and then going into reading magazines and purchasing the CDs at whatever
Yeah.
store I could go to at the time. So, like the Doors and
Hmm. So
the
a lot of like
Who.
the 60s, 70s, like classic psych rock type stuff.
Yeah. And then I was reading this when I was 13. I read this article in Rolling Stone magazine, which, my opinion is not high for that magazine, but I'm not going to try to put them down or anything.
Yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying.
They had the 500 greatest albums of all time, and I was curious on what was on the list,
Yeah.
and my music interest was still very new at that period of my learning on my own,
Hmm.
and I saw this one album with a weird cover, and I looked at the year and said 69, so I was like, oh, the 60s, I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
And the name was cool, and it was Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band with Trout Mask Replica.
Oh, hell yeah.
And then I bought it, I don't know, a few weeks later,
Hmm.
and I listened to the first song, and then I switched over to here and there scattered through the album.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh yeah, these songs are cool, but I still didn't really understand it, and and most of it I didn't like at that period. And it took me up in 10 years later to fully understand the genius of that album,
Uh-huh.
and still to this day understanding the growth of it.
Yeah.
So a lot of so I was like 13 when that happened, and then 14 and 15, when I was going into high school, my interest grew with folk and classical. Well, not so much classical at that point, but folk music, rock music, the blues interest me a lot, jazz music. So it's, at that period of time, early high school, I was listening to Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan, but also listening to Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, and then also the Doors and Pink Floyd, and Jimi Hendrix and people like that. And then later on, going through high school, got more interested in obscure music within those genres.
Yeah, so just like the natural kind of progression of like really getting into a genre and then slowly finding the more weirdo stuff out there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like the first time I listened to The Shape of Jazz to Come by Ornette Coleman, I was 15. Because it was kind of like immediate door opening for me at that period.
Yeah. So at that point, were you kind of just like, wow, like you're 15 years old, you're like listening to Ornette Coleman. At that point, were you kind of like, this is something that I want to do too? Or?
Well, yeah, it was weird because I was 12 years old. I never picked up an instrument. Well, I picked up the flute for 2 weeks when I was in the 4th grade, but that was it. And I didn't pick up an instrument up until I was probably 12, and I was just messing around on bass, electric bass, and then eventually led into guitar. but I liked playing it left-handed, and all the guitars and that I played were right-handed. So I
Yeah.
would have to do the Hendrix thing and put it upside down, play it,
Yeah.
and learn chords backwards.
Oh,
Which
wow.
I
So you taught yourself on a guitar backwards. It's crazy.
Yeah, but which I which was a good learning experience for me, because then later on I would find out how to do and make up certain chords uh, that were more fitting to what I was expressing at that period.
When did you get involved, or were you involved in like the Ojai, like Ventura DIY scene? Did that come like later on? Like, when did you start, like, I guess, like seriously making music with like other people, or like putting out tapes, like doing all that stuff? So you have like this, you know, deep interest in like this classic music, and then getting more into like the obscure. When did you start, I guess, like seriously making stuff?
Well, uh, in Ojai specifically, during that time in high school, uh, the 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I the main music that was produced by people my age was hardcore music, like punk music, and they were all, that's a DIY art form.
Totally. I know Ventura, Ojai had like a pretty active like DIY hardcore punk scene and stuff like back in like early 2000s and stuff. So,
Yes, definitely.
yeah.
It's it's still there, but it's not the same. It's definitely different.
Hey, we still got Charman.
Yes. uh, I feel like we're always going to, and that's a good thing. Uh, so, I mean, I would listen to people that were my age playing music, but I didn't understand the music at that time, because a lot of it was either skate punk inspired or power violence inspired.
Mm,
Uh, and yeah, it just didn't interest me at that time.
hmm.
I mean, the one thing that I could hold on to was the drumming was interesting to me, because it was, uh, it's like a machine gun. It's just going really fast.
Insane, especially like the power violence just
Yeah.
blast, you know? So,
And then, I was friends with all those guys, and early on it was kind of before I really, really hard delve into playing music.
hmm.
But right before that, I was just interested in going to my friends' practice and their rehearsals, and just being around people making music,
Yeah.
but not participating. And all my friends were just, doing it and making copies of things and giving them to people, and that's kind of like how they promoted their art form.
Yeah. Super
Um,
DIY, just word of mouth, handing stuff out,
yeah,
word of mouth.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it never really like registered to me until later that was a lesson that I was learning.
Yeah.
And the first group I was in, we only played 3 concerts, and that was right after I graduated high school, a year after,
So, what
in
was that group called?
2007. It was called the Hemp Necktie,
The Hemp
uh,
Necktie?
and I played guitar and sang in that band. And my
Oh,
other,
how?
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, how did the Hemp Necktie start?
Well, my friend Dan, who was the other guitar player singer, uh, I mean, we were all just a bunch of friends. It was me and Dan on guitar and singing, my friend Alexa
Mm-hmm.
on bass, and then my friend Celeste on drums.
Mm-hmm.
And they were still in high school at the time, and we were just we all had similar interests. Dan and I more so
Mm-hmm.
them at that time, and we just wanted to. I mean, really, the goal was just to be a rock band, and kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
inspired by you know psychedelic '60s music.
Yeah.
specifically psychedelic rock music.
Mm-hmm.
So we were just kind of um, wanted to write songs. And that was kind of like, we did it really quickly. I mean, looking back on it, those weren't good songs, uh, but it was my introduction to making music
Yeah, it was like your
with
introduction
other people.
to like DIY music production, kind of getting your feet wet. So, what came after the hemp necktie?
And then directly after that, Dreamcolor started, and that was a group I was in uh, from late 2007 until 2015 was our last concert, and that was in Ojai.
Okay.
And we mainly played in Ventura County. 2008, 2009 was kind of the heyday of our performances. And that was also my introduction, that time period, listening to different kinds of free jazz, like more in depth and more honest. Not to say that anything else isn't, but like something that you could really relate to.
Yeah.
Like Sun Ra, Peter Broadsman, the European people,
Yeah.
the Japanese free jazz people. But at the same time, I was listening to krautrock and psychedelic rock, and then that was my like I was like probably 19. That was, and then I got really interested in classical music, 20th century classical music, the beginning of that, and that specifically with Igor Stravinsky.
Okay.
And hearing his music, that wasn't the main three ballets that that are his more famous pieces. And the first one I heard, I was like, oh, I need to check out his work. Was Les Noches, which is a choir piece with orchestra, and it was kind of it made me more interested in learning kind of like the soul of composing and playing.
So I guess you had like all these, influences, stuff that you were listening to, getting more deep into like, could we call it like the heavier free jazz, stuff that you resonated with more. Were you incorporating this stuff like into Dreamcolor?
Yes. So Dreamcolor, the people that were in it at that time, well, the whole point of the band was that it was a revolving door. We of musicians, and every show was completely different. There was never rehearsed.
So revolving door, do you mean like a different lineup of musicians every time?
Yes, and the quantity was always different, and
Mm.
which obviously the quality was too.
Yeah.
But uh, and it was completely improvised. We kind of got that from the Yahoo 13 group, which people later on, like Drag City, released a lot of their records later on.
Oh, really?
But all their recordings are from the 70s.
Okay.
They were Los Angeles cult.
That sounds seriously sick.
Band.
They're called a Yahoo 13.
Yahoo 13.
Yahoo 13. I've actually never heard of that. I'll have to check that out. That
Yeah,
sounds pretty cool.
yeah, you should. So anyway, we took that platform, but we did it with our instruments and with our backgrounds and our interests. In our abilities at the time too. Like a lot of it, we basically were teaching ourselves how to play, and Alex Gray was the main. Him and I were the main people in the band, and then everyone. There was more people. Some people were had different periods too, but we were always. It was kind of a duo.
So it was always you and Alex Gray at the very like center of the whole thing, and you kind of just recruit people per show and like, yo, let's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. There was a lot of shows we did where it was like I just met that person right before I went on stage.
Wow, it's
I don't
amazing.
know what they were gonna play. A lot of it was really scary because you don't know where it's gonna go. You
Hmm.
don't know if it's gonna work. But it kind of you, and sometimes it didn't work, and sometimes I thought we played terrible. You know, uh,
It's the beauty of
but
it, I guess,
we
though.
always tried to transcend into something that was true to us.
Yeah. So I guess where did it go from Dream Color? So you said that lasted until when? 2015, I believe you said?
Yeah, but our main concerts were from
Where
2008 to 2010
Okay,
because
so
we. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, so I guess like from after like the 2010 point where you said that you weren't really doing too many shows after that, I guess where did you go from there? And how did that like lead into what you're doing currently?
Hmm. Well, so I moved around a bit, and Alex and I actually moved to Oakland at that time,
Mm,
2010 to 2012,
okay.
and that was that's how it kind of like faded into
Yeah, into
being
something.
less.
Yeah.
Um, but that was also my excuse to do my own material,
Yeah.
uh, and getting some people uh, around me at the time were encouraging me to play or recording my own music. So I did.
Hmm.
And then kind of, and I had all these ideas constantly of what I want to do musically and through song to song and how to do it and how to play it and who I want to play with.
Yeah.
Uh, and so there was a lot of, moving around a little bit. I was in LA for a little bit, but, kind of just stayed in Ojai and I've been there since.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Alex was doing his own label at the time. It's called Deep Tapes. It was from like 2009 to 2014, roughly. But
Okay.
during that, and he released one of my album or two of my albums on cassette tape, and but they took really long. It took like 2 years to come out,
Really?
and he was suggesting, well, why don't you just do your own label? And I was like, oh yeah, why don't I? I mean, mainly a lot of it was financial because financially it's hard,
Yeah, exactly.
to produce all that stuff.
Especially if you're doing it all yourself, you know?
Yeah, and so I'm. It takes me a long time too, still,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, and then I just was like, oh, I could just do what I want to do now. I could
Yeah.
release all my music because no one at the time, I was also at that period, and when I was living in LA, I was trying to get people to release my music, and just no one wanted to. So I was like, oh, I'll just have to do it now.
Yeah. Like might as well
Kind of
just
more of a necessity.
yeah, I feel that. So you said you like moved around a little bit. What came out of living in Oakland and I guess like LA respectively in terms of like your musical output?
But yeah, well, that was kind of a more paused years for me musically because I didn't really play with too many people that period.
Mm,
Um, I tried to, but and then all the main people I played with at that period were from Ojai. So anytime I was in Ojai, I would play with them.
yeah.
And it was people from like Felt Hello, a
Mm,
couple of my friends, um, just Ojai scene people, Ventura County people.
yeah. So is that why you kind of just naturally like moved back to Ojai after spending some time in Oakland and LA?
Yeah, it was a mental health issue for me too. It was just kind of more easy.
Yeah.
All my resources are here, so I kind of just was like, it's
Yeah,
get
exactly.
it.
So, if you feel comfortable talking about this, I saw in like a couple other publications that you were diagnosed with like schizophrenia in your teens. How did
Yeah.
this come into play with like music and I guess your your I guess life?
Um, in the early stages of me performing music, specifically with Dreamcolor, that period of time, it was really hard for me to, I couldn't physically cry, in which I definitely had that feeling to do that, and I wanted
Mm.
to, but I couldn't. Um, but so it was a good platform for me to express that musically, because I would cry through my saxophone per se,
Yeah.
uh, and it was kind of like it was definitely therapeutic for me, and
Hmm.
maybe did what it had to do that period, um, and throughout the years, it's you know uh, it's definitely been challenging a lot in my life, but
Hmm.
throughout the years, later uh, in my life, is getting healthier and dealing with it, and I feel like the music is kind of transcends be sane. And I mean, if one wanted to, uh, they could do like a state case study on my music. If they could find certain elements of schizophrenia with it, but it's either here or there.
Yeah, yeah. I find that amazing that you like used music kind of as like a therapy for yourself as well. Is that kind of like where the name Weird Cry for your label came from?
Yeah, it actually the name sprouted from uh, basically strange, depressing songs.
Hmm.
I wanted to showcase that kind of side of the world,
Yeah.
even though that a lot of it isn't sad or weird, but some of it is too. So
Yeah. That's cool. So, you had like this I guess like past early childhood growing up with like all this like psychedelic music more popular and then getting into more of like the weird stuff and then getting involved with like friends and you started to make music, had a band, moved a couple places, had some were dealing with your own mental health. um so did you have any other, I guess, like hobbies or anything that came into play that influenced your work as well on top of like the music and all the other things we mentioned?
yes, yeah, it's early on in my life when I was probably like 3 or 4. My grandma uh, taught me how to paint,
Mm.
but her teaching uh, was a few words, and it was do whatever you want, and that kind of like just opened my mind as a 3 or whatever 4-year-old child, be like, oh, possibility is endless. So
Yeah.
that kind of influenced me a lot throughout my life since then. And but also, when I was a child, my parents would always take me to museums, to theater, uh, to movies, to parks, to museums. I think I already said that, but and kind of just experiencing uh, things that um, can be internalized, but also public at the same time. Kind of like visual art or dance or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I probably around 2014, I discovered this way for myself. I mean, some of it was influenced from Anthony Braxton and other people of that kind of music. But I found out my own system on how to create music through from visual composition, but also using writing with that as well, text.
Mm.
Uh, and
So do you mean like composing, like you learned how to like actually like read music and then like write it down and compose everything or?
That came in a little later, but that specific type of music the system I created for myself was having the dimensional influence. And what I mean by that is that I'll listen to a piece of music and write a stream of conscious, quote unquote, poem of what I'm actually physically listening to
Yeah.
in an abstract way. And then I would title that poem, kind of like a shorthand of what it means. And then from that title, I would physically create a visual aid of what it's saying abstractly. And then that image is the score that I would come to reading musically.
Wow, so that's amazing. So you kind of just created this whole like creative process for yourself. And do you still, I guess, use this creative process when you're coming up with, I guess, music now?
Yes, I've only done 2 concerts with that process.
Okay.
The last concert I did actually was that. I was titling it Trans Image Music.
Mm.
And luckily I had Eugene Chadbourne in the band, and another Ojai musician and a Ventura musician. And this Los Angeles vocalist who's really amazing. Her name's Catherine Schumann.
I guess what goes into like the other part, or like I guess music, your creative process for like the rest of your music does it like differ from piece to piece, or is it kind of just like one method that you use, or?
Yeah, it's the method to me is that it's always different.
Yeah, kind of like
But
what your grandma was telling you, just do what you want.
yeah,
Mm.
but it seems like a lot of, even working with musicians, it's not an everything goes situation, which a lot of people that aren't interested in improvised music think that's what it is, but it's not.
Hmm.
And there are guidelines, there is structure, there is form, there is all these things that we all understand as, video jingles, if you want to call it. But it's stretched out and unrecognizable at first, so people kind of they don't hear the subtleties, and all they hear is noise. But
Yeah.
noise is music too, so I don't know.
Moving on to, I guess, more of like your label. Give me the rundown on Weird Cry. So, you already mentioned that it kind of like came out of like necessity, right? Like, what else can you tell me about it? What goes into like the aesthetic? How do you decide like what to put on it? All that.
Mm-hmm. Well, initially it was just kind of like music I wanted to put out from around Ventura County, and in my own music, obviously. But and there was a period I just wanted to release things that I liked, but I'm more selective now. Even though that I want to, it's more vast.
Mm-hmm.
Aesthetically, it's just kind of things that I'm interested in. Kind of, I like very composed music in all spectrums, but I also like improvised music in all spectrums.
Mm-hmm.
Like the band Trough that I put out. They're my friends from Oakland, and they're kind of a really unique band because they are a punk band, but I've never heard punk sound like that.
Yeah.
And the guitar player, who's actually from Santa Barbara originally, I discussed it with him one time about his music, and he was saying that punk music is kind of more one-dimensional when it comes to tonality on guitar, and he thinks that it should be more orchestrated, more stretched out, and more uh, versatile, which, and what he does. But yeah, it's just kind of like folk music. I really enjoy, traditional, Shaine Parrish I released last year.
Yeah.
He was like a North Carolina guitar player who had an album on Zydek in 2016.
Yeah, Shaine Parrish is cool.
And just people I want to like collaborate with, like, the Eugene Chadbourne duo albums I have, and the Tatsuya albums, because like Tatsuya to me is, a field of his own, and I kind of want to try to showcase music that's more of its own music, not necessarily a trend or a middle of the road genre.
Yeah, exactly. Like outside of the box. You want to be a little different, separate yourself from what everyone else is doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And you mentioned like collaborating with all these people. You've worked with some incredible musicians, like you said, Tatsuya Nakatani, Shaine Parrish, Eugene Chadbourne, as well as like Patrick Shirishi, Cameron Stallones from Son of Ra, Chris Corsano, Bill Orcutt, Peter Brotzman. I guess like I don't even know where to start with this question, but I guess like how do you decide who you want to collaborate with, and how do these like come about?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is being a fan of these people, and really digging deep into their musical psyche. And the people that I have fortunately collaborated with, that's the case. And the people that I showcase, like Bill Orcutt and Peter Brotzman and other people, Dave Bixby, but like that is more on the showcasing side. That's more of like, I'm showing to the world, it's like, hey, these people are important. You should listen to it, and or have whatever experience that you're going to have.
Yeah.
Concert, because it's a rare thing and it's not going to happen all the time.
That's cool. So you kind of like use that as like almost a thing of itself. And I think I saw like on your Discogs or something, you call it like the Weird Cry Records or Weird Cry, I guess, concert series or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a whole part of like Weird Cry in itself is like, hey, like besides the things that I put out and like all the collaborations I do, like you should also check this out in a live performance way, because this is just something you're not going to see anywhere else. This is just totally like special, specific to what we're offering here.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I kind of want to like just do all the points of the collective of art.
Yeah.
So, eventually I want to release photograph books and art books and zines. I have all these things planned. I just, the finances is
like we were saying before, the finances. It takes a while to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
I feel you. So I guess this might be a hard question to answer, but if you had to choose one collaboration that kind of gave you that like aha moment that jump started like, this is what I want to do. I just want to like keep collaborating with people, using, I guess, keep creating outside of what you're doing like on your own. Who would it be with? Who would you say started it all for you?
That I performed with?
I guess like performed with or like made a record with, like any collaboration that you may have done. Yeah.
I guess the initial one would be Eugene Chadbourne. He was kind of the more, he was like kind of the first hero I kind of befriended.
Definitely, Eugene Chadbourne is definitely, for those that don't know, a very prolific musician from the 90s. Did a lot of like banjo work, guitar work. I always go into record stores and find like 7 inches by Eugene Chadbourne and stuff.
Yeah.
So how did that start? How did you end up collaborating with Eugene Chadbourne? Was it just like, I'm gonna shoot this guy an email and be like, hey, we should like play sometime, like I've been a fan of your work for a long time? Or Or did he like approach you? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. I wrote him and explaining that like I could do all these concerts for you, put you up, pay you. I mean, a lot of I have to pay all the musicians,
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
um, and uh, yeah, it kind of just came down to that, and then uh, it eventually turned into a conversation, and then we just decided to record and perform.
That's amazing. So is that kind of just how it went with like everybody else too that you've collaborated with, or did it kind of just like start flowing from there?
Yeah, I mean, the flow was like that, but that's kind of the initial approach.
I'm like curious about this too. I was seeing on your Discogs that you released some stuff with I guess Drag City and like Sun Arc, which I believe Sun Arc might have been like distributed through Drag City too,
Correct.
something
Yes.
like that. Um, how did those collaborations come about?
Well, Cameron from Sonora is was a fan of my music,
Mm.
um, and Alex, who was in Dreamcolor, later uh, joined Sonora as in the group, and
Okay.
so there was a lot of socializing with that.
Okay.
And he has a deal with Drag City, um, and we kind of just like put it in there.
Yeah.
Um, but I only the actual um, interactions I've had with the label itself was just kind of a more how many records can I buy off the label of my own record? So
Really?
yeah, I've never really actually talked to them. Like
Okay.
besides that,
Yeah. That's really interesting actually. I feel like that's kind of lame for a label that's so highly regarded. You know what I'm saying?
well, I mean, they did me a good favor, and and they put the money into it.
Yeah. That's cool though. And so I guess just another part of another thing you're doing that is like creative currently. What can you tell me about like your NetNet radio show? We're NetNet radio homies.
Yeah. Well, that was more that kind of got into my friendship with Mike Meanstreets.
Yeah.
Um, and he kind of just asked, he just approached me and said, "Do you want to do this?" I was like, "Yeah." Eventually my show is going to be involved with more label things, but right now I'm just doing songs that I like.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, be sure to check out the Weird Cry radio show on NetNet. What time is that at? What time slot?
uh, 8 p.m. On Wednesdays, but I think it's 20 or 10 Pacific Standard Time. I don't know.
Okay.
Whatever the Pacific Standard Time is.
Yeah.
California, it's 8 p.m.
So 8 p.m. California Wednesdays. Be sure to check out Weird Cry Radio Show. So I guess we didn't really touch too much on this too. I guess what places do you like work with the most in Ojai to I guess like put on your Weird Cry music showcases?
uh, well, the most would probably be Kim Maxwell Studio and the Ojai Valley Women's Club.
And
Uh,
I know Ojai Valley Women's Club has had some history within the punk scene too in Ojai, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
in 90s and stuff. Maybe even earlier. I don't know exactly the
Maybe I'm not sure about that, but definitely in the 2000s,
2000s at
that
least.
was a high. It was like two concerts a week.
That's
You know?
crazy.
Yeah,
And then
I never went to any of them. So
yeah, so I feel like there isn't really shows happening very much in the Ojai Women's Club except for you putting them on. So was it kind of just like a thing when you're looking for shows, just like, hey, this used to be a thing. Can we still make this happen?
pretty
Or
much, yeah. And kind of like babied it into having a relationship with those people, and so
yeah,
uh, and it kind of just went from there. But yeah, and then it's expensive to rent, so.
Yeah. So, how were you involved? I remember someone telling me when I was just talking to them about something about music. Someone, I think Warbler Records, um, had mentioned that there was like a barn or something in Ojai that people would play all the time. Do you know anything about that?
uh
Like punk bands would play there, like hardcore.
yeah, that was in Upper Ojai. That was my friend's brother's concert series thing. That was in the 90s and 2000s. That was kind of before my time.
Oh, really?
But a lot of bands from like Ventura, Oxnard would play there, like early Todd Jones bands.
Yeah.
If you don't know who he is, he's the Nails guy.
Oh, really? Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, yeah, and just kind of like Ojai people, and his brother. I mean that guy's brother, his friends I'm talking about, their other brother too. We're in a band and with my other friends in high school that I would watch all the time, and they were called Bone Out.
Okay.
They were like a hardcore band,
Yeah.
so that was kind of my introduction to that kind of knowledge.
So, I guess we're getting close to wrapping up the show here. Do you have anything you're looking forward to doing as an artist post COVID? Um, it could be anything, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm slowly recording, adding to my discography and composing and learning and practicing. Since COVID, I've been buying a lot of instruments, so I've been kind of learning all that kind of stuff, mostly woodwinds.
Yeah, that's tight.
And um, yeah, I have ideas about when I could be with people again, kind of
Yeah.
doing ensembles and compositions that I want to try to perform, and touring a lot too. I want to do that again.
You planning on touring again?
Yeah.
That'll be sick. So is there anything coming out in the near future that our listeners can look out for in terms of your output? Any collaborations or any solo works?
Yeah, I'm working on a lot of things, recording wise, solo wise. So that's going to be sprinkled out throughout the year,
Sick.
and on Weird Cry, and I'm going to finally release the CD with Marshall Trammell and I of the you could download it already, but the CD is going to come out, and then Sean McCann of Recital Program Records is going to release one of my albums this year.
Sick. That's cool.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's more classical influenced.
That's amazing. So I guess where can people keep up with your output if you had like one place for them to check out? Do you have any social media or platforms that people can follow you?
Yeah, I have Where Cry Records Instagram, Where Cry Records Facebook, Where Cry Records Bandcamp. If you want to listen to the music directly, I would suggest to go to the Bandcamp.
Tight. So there it is. Be sure to check out the Facebook, the Instagram to keep up with all new releases. I guess just anything that has to do with Weird Cry and like Rob's output. And be sure to listen to it all on Bandcamp. Maybe throw some money down and purchase a couple of the records yourself.
Yes.
So before we go, Rob, I feel I have at least one more question.
Yeah.
Kind of a difficult one. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, so a rat is going to jump into your mouth. Do you want this rat to jump into your mouth head first? Or do you want this rat to jump into your mouth butt first, and why?
Probably head first so I could see where it's going.
Just so you can see where it's going. What are you gonna do after it jumps into your mouth? How can you elaborate on this situation?
Well, you know, I could see it head on, see it in his eyes, what kind of rat it is, personality.
You want to see its personality before anything else happens. That's hilarious. You want to get to know the rat
Yeah,
before you want to know it face to face before you can make a decision on what happens next. I love that. That's amazing.
yes.
So, anyways, I think that's all we have for today. So be sure to tune into the show on KCSB FM 91.9, Sundays 4 to 6 p.m. and netnetradio.com out of Tijuana if you missed the live stream. This has been Rob Magill. Thanks again for being on the show, Rob. It's been a pleasure.